Hi everyone. Today I'm very happy to share a piece of my recent writing on China and Article 18 of UDHR. Okay, so basically my writing is about in 1940s, a group of Chinese diplomats represented by Zhang Pengchun, okay, what they argue um, in human rights standard and how they represent the Chinese art, Chinese culture, and the Chinese philosophy, and try how did they try to insert Chinese culture and philosophy into the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Okay, so to begin with, I want to say what those Chinese diplomats argued does not really represent how the Chinese government at that time, how the government thinks, because around time, the Chinese government was busy in civil war, okay, fighting with Communist Party. So they kind of have a very loose control towards those diplomats when they were discussing Universal Declaration. So many scholars will believe those stands representing China were more of those arguments or opinions of those diplomats their own. Okay, so that's one note to say before the whole picture. The first argument, Zhang Pengchun and other Chinese diplomats, they argue is that China at the time, it supported universal human rights. Okay, surprisingly, okay, not totally the same as how Chinese government will argue for human rights today. A few decades before, Chinese government represented by those diplomats, China supported universal human rights, and their argument was, if you really want to make those principles universal, you would need non-Western culture and non-Western concepts. Okay, China and the Chinese culture, Chinese terms will be good representation for non-Western concepts. Something was quite typical, or many scholars will believe is a big contribution for Chinese diplomats, was during the drafting of Article 1, what is the basic human quality. Zhang Pengchun argued that conscious as something to grasp the essence of Chinese culture and Chinese philosophy should be sitting in the same article besides reason, a very typical Western philosophy or terms to represent how the Western philosophy think about the basic quality of human beings. At the time, Zhang Pengchun, he disagreed with many arguments that religion or God or nature, those kind of terms should be mentioned to represent human quality. For him, religion or non-religion should not be mentioned when talking about human quality because it shows like those principles have a certain attitude towards religion. By not saying anything, by not mentioning any reference to religion, for Zhang Pengchun, Universal Declaration showed an inclusive attitude towards religion. That's his argument. So he argued that Chinese culture represented by the concept of conscience, sitting together with the Western concept as reason, the two terms to capture the essence of human quality. But I also have to make a note, conscience is the final choosing from translators. Zhao Pengchun wasn't very satisfied by the word of conscience because for him, this word had not grasped all the ideas he take from Chinese culture, Chinese philosophy to represent China. He wasn't very satisfied by the word. Why is that? Because he make different pieces from Chinese culture, want to make a package and insert it into Article 1. So by saying conscious, he actually mean a few things. Firstly, he meant maybe a moral standard, Okay, this idea was directly inspired by the idea of Ren, Chinese Confucian concepts. Okay, if you want to be human, you need to treat others quite nicely. Okay, so that's like a human standard by the term of conscience. Second, maybe in Confucianism, Ren as an ultimate moral status is a universal pursuit, at least something universal, okay, from Chinese culture, at least for Confucianism. Okay, so something universal he grasped from Chinese culture. Also directly taken from one term called 良心, good heart, okay, from one Chinese philosopher, Mencius, okay, not Confucius himself, Mencius, okay. By the term of good heart, Mencius meant every human being was endowed with a good human nature, okay. This term of 良心 or good heart from Mencius is the basement for Mencius to argue everybody has a good inclination to do good deeds, to achieve ultimate like moral status, because everybody have this tendency. Okay, so Mencius trying to make this argument with typically another philosopher, okay, Xunzi, because the other philosopher was argue everybody has a bad tendency towards behave badly towards other people. That's why we need education. Okay, so this is like hundreds of years fight between two philosophers. Okay, to make this point further complicated, Confucius, who lived before the two philosophers, did not take side in this fight, of course, because he lived before them. But other things in Confucius' philosophy, he doesn't say anything about whether human beings have a tendency to good or to bad. He only mentioned for Confucius, habits make a difference. So if you stay with good people, you practice moral activity consistently, then you will become a good person. If you stay with bad persons, okay, you can consistently behave not moral activity. So you end up with a bad person. So that's Confucius philosophy. Everybody have a tendency, or tendency makes the, not everybody have a tendency towards good or not, but habits make a difference. Okay, constant practice of moral activity is the most important thing. So some philosophers will argue maybe Confucius is more smart in this regard. Okay, so but if we come back to Universal Declaration in 1940s, Zhang Pengchun take one piece of argument from Mencius to men, everybody, okay, have a good nature. Okay, when they're born, you have something goodness, okay, taken from the nature. So these are few different pieces Zhang Pengchun want to make, okay, in the term of conscience. That's why, as I said before, he was not satisfied with the final translation or the final terminology of conscience as it is, because he meant quite a few different things. Also because, as I said, this is a choice, this is a compromise, trying to grasp different piece of meaning from Chinese culture. That's why, sorry, I have to forward to the next page here. He doesn't follow the Western debate like the consciousness object as maybe physicians or soldiers can make an argument based on conscience, like if there was a controversial operations, maybe they will have a legitimate stand to object to that based on conscience. Zhang Pengchun doesn't want to get into that kind of argument. So his stance was this: well, this is a very noble idea, a very diplomatic way to say, to show his agreement to this kind of idea. But Zhang Pengchun proposed a compromise suggesting that since many states did not recognize this concept, so UDHR should acknowledge this reality and refrain from endorsing the consciousness object notion too strongly. So some people will say Zhang Pengchun was a master of compromise. So here, just to here by using this kind of technology to what the real idea Zhang Pengchun was to say, even though he made argument based on conscience, he doesn't want to fully support the idea of people can reject controversy based on conscience. Okay, that's the state of Zhang Pengchun. Okay. Also, when we come back to Zhang Pengchun's idea about different concepts relating to freedom thought, he made it very clear during the drafting history. He supported freedom thought, freedom speech, press, and religion. So he totally agreed with those ideas. Also, he has in his mind an idea of like the hierarchy or who existed before whom. So in his statement, so Zhang Pengchun stated in the drafting record that he thought freedom thought is the foundation for freedom of belief because freedom thought existed before the latter. Also, the content of it will encompass the right to alter one's belief. Okay, so also Zhang Pengchun thought freedom thought would include both conscience freedom and religious liberty. That's his argument. The second stance from Chinese diplomats represented by Zhang Pengchun is those diplomats supported freedom conscience as a defense against political coercion. Okay, so this is the idea. Also, you can find the root in Chinese philosophy, particularly in the philosophy of Mencius. So Mencius maybe is one of those philosophers who said this very strongly and expressively that moral authority should be above, okay, the political authority. So he would even argue someone may give up his life to achieve morals, to follow one's moral standard, okay, to abandon or to obey, rebel government authority. So that's Mencius' argument. So, but not every Chinese philosopher will go that far. So if we come back to Confucius, Confucius has actually taken very inclusive or two-folded way towards political coercion. You could find roots or comments from Confucius to say you should avoid fighting against the government. You should keep yourself safe, avoid controversy, maybe stay at home. Don't be involved in political don't get involved in political controversy or don't serve the government when time's not right. Also, you can find like argument from Confucius to say, even though that's your destiny, that's your fate, you'll definitely lose it, but still you have your own way, your own Tao, your own standard, your own moral principle that you could serve. Despite that, you may lose, including you may lose your life. So you can find those two-folded approaches from Confucius towards how to choose between your moral standard and political authority. So here, if we come back to 1940s in the Universal Declaration, then Zhang Pengchun's ideas support freedom of Confucius as a defense against political coercion. You can find roots in Mencius. The last point I want to make is like Zhang Pengchun's idea and what they have done to many Western scholars is a very good representation of China. But actually, what the deeds they have done in 1940s, it took a long time for Chinese government, Chinese researchers to recognize as this is the work of ours. Because remember, what happened in 1940s, that's before the establishment of People's Republic of China. So it took a long time for people to relate things happened in Universal Declaration, and that's the work of us. Okay, so here I just want to give you two examples. So like Zhang Pengcheng was deeply involved in the establishment of one renowned university in China, that's Nankai University, sorry. But it's not until 2017, Nankai University make a public statement to recognize, oh, this is someone very important to us. We should have a statue for him. So you see, this is a news from the university to have a statue for Zhang Pengcheng. Also, just a few months ago, in December of 2023, I participated in one conference in China to talk about the thing Zhang Pengcheng has did in 1940s. But remember, this is the first conference in mainland China about Zhang Pengcheng. About it, just we are using Zhang Pengcheng as the full theme of conference that happened for the first time. So still, we have today the China or Chinese culture or Chinese philosophy, Chinese diplomats. We have a lot of unsolved problems in dealing with how should we keep interact with international human rights standard. For one, we know like Zhang Pengcheng has done a good job in 1940s trying to introduce Chinese philosophy into Western culture or into international human rights culture. But there are a lot of inconsistencies between Chinese culture and the human rights standard. To begin with, freedom as a very abstract idea, abstract concept. Chinese philosophy and the Western culture or Western philosophy have a very different attitude. So in China or in Chinese philosophy, freedom is not something everybody should enjoy. Also, freedom is not like everyone can achieve that in Chinese philosophy. Okay, so for Confucius, this idea of abstract freedom, it's not of the ultimate value. At most, it has limited instrumental value. Because if you're talking about someone have a freedom to choose, it's nothing to be proud of, unless someone choosing moral standard, choosing something good. So that's the attitude of Chinese philosophy. Okay, so moral quality of the choice is something be more emphasized than the mere act of choosing itself. That's the attitude of Confucianism in general. Of course, China have different philosophies, but we do not have one philosophy that's similar to Western understanding. Even in Taoism, okay, in Zhuangzi, another philosopher, very well-renowned philosopher. In Zhuangzi's work, freedom is something everybody desire, or it's the ultimate goal in life. But in this idea, like I showed the picture here, in his description, what is freedom like? It's like you can, at one time, be a fish in the ocean. Maybe the next moment you can be a big bird flying in the sky. Okay, that's the symbol of wandering, of freedom, ultimate freedom. But to achieve that freedom in Zhuangzi's work, you have to give up like your personal bias, okay, or personal preconceptions, or personal ideas, even personal emotions. Because for Zhuangzi in general, even emotion is harmful for one's inner peace. So this kind of idea, I don't think it goes quite well with contemporary idea of what a freedom is. Okay? The one thing is about philosophy. We have to keep finding how can we keep interacting Chinese philosophy with Western standard or international standard. The other thing is, even though we think Zhang Pengcheng and other other Chinese diplomats has done a good job, okay, in interacting Chinese culture with internationals. But after that, we do not have consistent interacts between Chinese culture and Western human rights culture. So that's why today we will simply say human rights standard, human rights culture is mainly a Western instruct. Even when we talk about Confucius, sorry, not Confucius. If we talk about conscience, if we talk about freedom conscience, I think today we seldom invoke what happened in 1940s, what did the Chinese diplomats, what they say around that time. So yes, in the drafting history, the existence of Chinese diplomats actually give us a good argument. Universal Declaration is not a purely Western construct. But after that, if we lack sustained interaction, if we do not have like consistent effort by keep combining Chinese culture with Western human rights standard, then it's difficult to keep the conversations going. So also another fact in China is Confucius. It had its highs and lows in China. Even today, like in China's constitution, we do not like in Chinese constitution, we have different guiding thoughts of the nation, including Marxism, Leninism, and other political leaders' thoughts, but Confucianism is not one of them. Okay, so something like in Chinese current constitution, we do affirm freedom of speech, religion, press, and assembly. But all this happened, we cannot say it's because of we have Confucian culture, or because what happened in 1940s, China's interaction with human rights standard. Chinese constitution have those expressions because of the influence under civil law system. Okay, so today, what can be the new drive and new peaks and new strategies to keep Chinese culture and the Chinese legal system like consistently developed, interact with Western international culture, or we say international human rights standard, is I think is a continuing problem or continuing challenge for scholars and diplomats. So in 1940s, we have one diplomat called Master of Compromise. So today, do we have a next Master of Compromise using different technologies and choosing Chinese cultures, okay, and keep making Chinese legal and political culture constant with human rights, international human rights standard. I think that's a challenge that we are facing today. So thank you very much for listening. And if you have any questions, comments, you're more than welcome to contact me. Thank you.